with our friend David Cobb from CBS Sports joining us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team, Mississippi Farm Bureau. David, I hope you enjoyed the opening weekend. I don't really dignify week 0 as the opening weekend. This was our opening weekend. What did you think?
Oh, it was glorious. It was spectacular. 5 days in a row. Pretty solid games every night. Even last night was nice with BC putting on a show at FSU. Sunday night was good with LSU and USC. And then Saturday was spectacular. My only problem with week 1 is that it makes week 2 and week 3 really difficult to hit that bar. So we're going to have a little bit of a letdown, actually, I think, this week. But, man, I loved week 1. I thought it was a lot of fun.
I will credit Brian Haydad with this. He says the games always deliver. Every time we go, oh, this weekend's kind of a crappy schedule, the games always deliver. And it's not like we had that many high-profile matchups. There were interesting games, but it wasn't like we just had a massive amount of high-profile matchups. But to me, one of the things, David, that stood out was how you had some individual performances that nobody was expecting going into the weekend. Like you get in your – you turn on the I say get in the hotel room late. That was my situation. You turn on the TV late on Saturday night, and you've got a receiver from Arizona going for over 300 yards. There was just a lot of cool stuff that happened this weekend.
Yeah, there was. Harrison Wallace being a stud at receiver for Penn State. You know, that's one of those things that comes to my mind. Something we've been waiting to get an answer on all year. Is Penn State going to be more dynamic offensively? Well, he sure looked, more dynamic for them in the passing game. And there's little instances of that around the country where you can glean some insight, if you will, even in games where the opponent might be overmatched, right? And so that's what's so fun about week 1. Like you get to see Nico at Tennessee finally play a game inside Neyland Stadium and look really, really good doing it. Yeah, it was against overmatched competition, but we finally got to see what that looks like. So that's and to me, I think the one unit or group that probably stood out above any other in college football, maybe outside of Georgia just dominating Clemson, it was Sunday night with USC's defense actually looking a lot better under DeAnton Lynn than it ever has under Lincoln Riley. And you can even go back to Oklahoma. The way USC played defense on Sunday night, that was as good or better than any Lincoln Riley team that we've seen play defense over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, that did not look like an Alex Grinch defense.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, that certainly is a good thing. Where does Florida State go from here?
Yeah, that's tough. It's a real test of Mike Norvell's coaching ability because in this day and time, especially with that roster specifically, they went so hard in the portal to try and keep the standard that they set last year. But now you get all these guys who are getting paid, but they don't have the deep buy-in. They weren't recruited to Florida State out of high school. They haven't known these coaches and their teammates for years. They are, in some cases, like DJU, they're just rentals. They're just there to try to keep the standard high, and now that that's not going to happen, are they bought in? Can Mike Norvell motivate those guys to get back on track? I think at this point, if Florida State goes 8-4, you got to tip your cap to Mike Norvell and say, wow, he did a good job of getting that thing back on track, because this is as disastrous of a start for a preseason top 10 team as we've had in quite some time.
Everything we did yesterday, everything we've done so far today has been kind of looking back to the weekend. Let's kind of take our first little bit of a preview, and there's a game that's going to kick off at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning that I am more intrigued by now than I was certainly a week ago or earlier in the summer. It's an Arkansas team that scored 70 against Arkansas Pine Bluff, but it was an offense that looked like it had a pulse with an exciting quarterback and a Bobby Petrino offense headed into Oklahoma State, where I'm assuming the Ollie Gordon show is just going to roll on. What do you make of that matchup between the Hogs and the Pokes?
Yeah, it's a nice little undercard when you got the big noon game there, Texas and Michigan. Folks in our part of the country might be as interested in Arkansas, Oklahoma State, because that's kind of one of those swing games for Sam Pittman. If you win that one, all of a sudden the conversation and the calculus around who you are and what you're going to be and how long you're going to last really starts to change. I don't take too much away from that Pine Bluff game. I mean, that Pine Bluff team was clearly so overmatched. I mean, even by the standards of SEC versus FCS, that one felt like an unfair fight. But, yeah, it's huge. And it's a big opportunity for the SEC, too, because when you think about A&M losing to Notre Dame and LSU losing to USC, and, it wasn't a fantastic first week for the SEC. So Arkansas going into Stillwater and beating a team that's supposed to be one of the best in the Big 12, that would sort of be a statement sort of moment for the SEC.
No question. And, I mean, boy, I don't know if Sam Pittman sleeps well at night, but I would think he would sleep well that night if they were able to pull that off. You mentioned Texas and Michigan. That's the big noon game on Fox, and man, it's got it all, right? Playing at the big house and great uniforms and traditional powers, and one's a reigning national champion and one was a playoff team a year ago. Based on what we saw this past Saturday, Texas looks like they're a lot better than Michigan. How does this one go?
Yeah, it's hard not to lean pretty heavily towards Texas at the moment because of the overall incompetence in Michigan's quarterback planning. They're starting a former walk-on in Davis Warren at quarterback, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how did Michigan get to a situation where that's the succession plan for J.J. McCarthy? And you can't blame this on, Jim Harbaugh left. It's not like Jim Harbaugh left and then they had two former five-star guys transfer out. That didn't happen. This was what Michigan was going towards all along with the quarterback plan. That is a quarterback room at Michigan right now that is void of any real high-caliber talent. And so, yeah, you got Donovan Edwards and you got some really good players on that defense, but Texas and Quinn Ewers, man, they might be able to get to 28 or 35 against you. And I don't know that Michigan has the high-powered offense or the quarterback that it needs to keep up. So that's a concern for me with Michigan. I can't wrap my mind around how poorly they planned the quarterback succession, there after J.J. McCarthy. So that's my big concern with the Wolverines is I just don't think they have a quarterback.
And, clearly Texas-Colorado State was a mismatch, but Colorado State is not an FCS team. I mean, that's an FBS team with 85 scholarships. I mean, that was more competition than a lot of teams saw this past weekend. In Charlotte, Tennessee, your alma mater, NC State. NC State didn't look great by any stretch. They pulled away at the end, but that game was closer than the final score. Vols a favorite in this game, over a touchdown favorite at this point. Thoughts on the matchup between the Vols and the Wolfpack?
Yeah, it's a good matchup for Tennessee. I think Tennessee will win this game without too much trouble. And because, as you mentioned, Grayson McCall and North Carolina State did not look good at all in their opener. And maybe it's a situation where, hey, let's not put anything on tape. Let's treat this like a glorified scrimmage. We've got a huge swing game for us coming up next week. Yeah, okay, but when you need to score 21 in the fourth quarter to rally and beat an FCS team, I mean, that's a bad sign. And it's not shocking, when you drop in a guy like Grayson McCall who spent his entire career at one place, and then all of a sudden he's playing in a new system for a new school with new teammates. It's not shocking that it's an unfinished product or a work in progress out of the gate. And where Tennessee has the advantage is even though Nico is new and he's not played a ton of game action, he's been in that Tennessee system since late in 2022 when he was an early enrollee there. And so he knows this system. He knows his teammates. He's got chemistry with the wideouts on his team, and he and Josh Heupel are in sync and lockstep on what to do out there on the field. And so I think that Tennessee offense is going to be really, really difficult to stop. And I don't think that Grayson McCall NC State offense is getting to more than 30 against Tennessee. And the Volunteers, they're going to be really, really hard to stop.
David Cobb from CBS Sports. Only 30 seconds left. Give me a thought on Mississippi State and Arizona State, both teams that scored a bunch of points. Arizona State maybe a little surprising in their domination of Wyoming. Mississippi State looked okay in game one for Jeff Levy, albeit against an FCS opponent.
Yeah, I think the Arizona State score was slightly misleading. They began that game with a pick six. It just sort of snowballed from there for Wyoming. But what did surprise me a little bit was the fact that Arizona State was able to run the ball pretty effectively against a pretty decent Mountain West program there at Wyoming. But, yeah, I've seen at least the highlights in Mississippi State. I didn't dive in on the EKU game. But Blake Shapen looked comfortable in that system. So, man, the over might be in play for that game.
David, always appreciate your time. Thanks for visiting, and we'll talk to you soon.